Happy Friday, everyone. Jason Aponte, Brad Graham in the building for your weekly State of the Franchise episode. And boy, do we got a lot of stuff to talk about. And you already know what's numero uno on today's list. We're going to get into it all right after this. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. I had to hit you with a little pump fake hezzy with the intro there. I had to make sure we got the right one cooking though, because it is State of the Franchise. How is everything going in your neck of the woods, Jason Aponte?
Everything's great. Closer to the draft, enjoying my time away from the madness. And yesterday was 420, but people have been smoking that good shit all week. When it comes, see, you literally told me not to curse, literally, like right before. So that's the last time, I promise.
You made it about 3 sentences in.
Right. People are smoking that good stuff already, even though yesterday was the day for that. But that pertains to the title of this.
Yeah, because obviously we'll get right into it. The whole situation around the San Francisco 49ers offseason, as we know, it's always going to revolve around the quarterback situation. And it will be that until the San Francisco 49ers ultimately find a guy that they can say they have the franchise guy. Now, we all know Brock Purdy, leader in the clubhouse, to be the clubhouse guy. But it does sound like, from what we've heard from John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, the San Francisco 49ers are going to have an open competition. At least that's the way I'm reading what they've said and what they expect. But Ian Rappaport put out a very carefully worded tweet. And I think because you can sense and tell that it was so carefully worded and put together, I think it's everyone's talking about Trey Lance trade. I mean, not just 49ers content creators. It's national media. It's on Get Up. It's on Bleacher Report. It's Sports Illustrated. It's everywhere. Everyone is talking about a Trey Lance trade. What? Let's go back to the original report. What did you make of, Ian Rappaport putting that out earlier in the week?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Let's put yourself in the general manager's shoes of a team that has a quarterback that you don't believe in, and you're not in range of getting one of these prized quarterbacks in this draft, right? Everything the 49ers have indicated is that Brock Purdy's the guy. And they've said so much, and I think you can just read what they're saying. It isn't necessarily anything that you need to read. They're literally coming out and telling you, Brock's our guy. He hasn't lost games, all of those things. Okay. So you're a middling team. You've got a quarterback that you don't believe in, that it's not your future. And there's this guy who's on the 49ers roster who's unproven. A lot of people believe have a high ceiling, and is someone that many organizations will say, let's get him in here. I can fix him. I can get him to where we need to go. Of course, you're going to call the San Francisco 49ers right now to see what that is. I took nothing, absolutely nothing from what Ian Rappaport said. Nothing. Because if you are a smart team and you are one of those, let's paint it in a better way. Elite quarterbacks, there's 5 of them. There's 32 teams in the NFL. That means there's 27 teams in the NFL that have middling average, average regular quarterbacks, and week to week can be piled in however it is that you're piling them in. So you're building your roster. You don't have a top 4 pick. Why wouldn't you call the San Francisco 49ers to see what Trey Lance would cost? I don't understand why this is breaking news. I don't understand why this has sent everyone into a tizzy. I don't understand why it has sent people into a state of finality that the 49ers are now going to trade Trey Lance. I want to point to literally 1 year ago today, Brad Graham, our viewers, San Francisco 49er fans. The Jets were intent on sending pick number 9 for Deebo Samuel. Oh, God. Deebo Samuel's gone. Oh, no. He's gone because he wanted a trade. He's in the nightclub making this motion. You would think San Francisco 49er fans would be more prepared and understand the games that are being played right now. So to go back to your original question, Brad, what did I take from Ian Rappaport's report? Nothing. And none of this means a damn thing. I don't care who is saying it. I don't care who you listen to that is pushing whatever it is. None of that means anything. It means nothing, Brad. Nothing. Huge nothing burger. Huge nothing burger.
So Ponte says it means absolutely nothing. Also, Chili says join the Discord. Make sure you hop into that. I got the link out. Really, really pleased with that situation. But back to the original topic. Ponte, you don't think it really stands for much of anything. It's more noise, right? More clickbait, more conversation starting. That's kind of the way you're perceiving this.
Brad, how I'm perceiving this is obvious at this point. I want to make sure I make another statement right here. If Brock Purdy was healthy, ready to go day one, there's no doubt in my mind that Trey Lance would have already been traded. Let me make sure I say that clearly. If Brock Purdy didn't tear his UCL and didn't have all these issues going into the season, Trey Lance would already be off this roster. Let me also say that. But in regards to the 49ers are fielding calls, of course people are calling. Why wouldn't they call? And if you're a general manager trying to build your roster and you are not in range of one of these top 4 quarterbacks, why wouldn't you try to send whatever it is that the 49ers would take, a second round, third round, whatever it is, for a quarterback with an immense ceiling still? It's just good business. But if Brock Purdy was healthy and Brock Purdy, however the season ended, was ready to go, there's no doubt in my mind Trey Lance would be off this roster. No doubt in my mind. I think they would absolutely be trading him.
So what I find fascinating, and I think you made the point, it's like teams are going to call on players. Like that probably happens a lot more than it's actually publicized because let's face it, these teams are always trying to improve. There's always guys on the trade block and teams are always just going to just pick up the phone and be like, hey, we're looking to get better at this position. You have this guy. You know, that happens all the time, but it's not reported on. I think what makes this particular situation interesting and in line with kind of the ongoing conversation around Trey Lance is that it was a carefully put together 2-tweet where Rappaport, what did he put out the original tweet? Then he quote tweeted it. And again, there's a huge emphasis on the wording, right? Versus making the call or taking the call. And that's why that entire situation was a well-crafted, who knows where it came from, but it came from somewhere. I don't think it's Ian Rappaport sitting on his hands going like, you know what, I'm going to tweet that teams are probably calling on Trey Lance today. So that's where I find the tweet interesting. The timing of the tweet with the draft, less than 6 days away and counting. And we know the draft is like its own deadline in a sense. You talked about it with Deebo Samuel, him potentially getting traded and those offers coming in. Ultimately, the 49ers didn't like any of them, so they didn't trade Deebo. They kept him, got him paid. Trey Lance, he's on his rookie deal. He's, still considered a high-level prospect because that's what he is. No one knows what he is. So that unknown leaves something available to be desired. Whereas you have Zach Wilson, on the other hand, you've seen enough sample size where you're like, maybe we don't really go down that road, where Trey Lance has 4 games under his belt. So it still leaves he's still raw. He's still young. We don't know what he is. And there's some value there. I found it interesting the way it was crafted, the timing of it, and the ongoing conversations, of course, around the San Francisco 49ers quarterback, just ongoing conversation, right? So that's what I found interesting about it.
I think everything you said is absolutely true, right? All of those things, right? And I implore people, and I don't work for HBO, I'm just telling you to go ahead and do this. The latest episode of Real Sports is surrounded around Drew Rosenhaus, who represents Jalen Carter. And for you guys that don't know, Jalen Carter is the defensive tackle from Georgia who had the unfortunate incident and had all the drama at the combine. Brad, you remember, okay?
I remember that.
I want you to watch this quick segment about this because I think it pulls back the curtain a little bit about where Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport get their scoops from. So Drew Rosenhaus let HBO film him calling. He literally called on the phone while he's talking to them, while he's being filmed, called Adam Schefter and said, we're not allowing Jalen Carter to be interviewed or go visit anybody who's not within the top 10 of the draft. Mm-hmm. And he's literally talking to Adam Schefter. This is an agent dropping this off. An agent dropping this off. All this to say, just watch that segment and just let you know, all of these things are games. There was a report last year that the Jets were going to give up pick 9 for Deebo Samuel. Whatever. Nothing happened. All of this deadline has to do with the draft. All of these things are games. Now, who's playing the games, I think, is the bigger question, Brad. Because watching that, you're watching someone who's trying to reboost Jalen Carter's status, right? Like he's trying to get him back into the conversation of where he was because he's an immensely talented young man. There's just the questions about his character that are now into play. But I felt that was really impactful because when Ian Rappaport tweets something, when Adam Schefter tweets something, like you said, they're not getting it from nowhere. They're not.
Right.
So who's doing the leaking? Is it Trey Lance's agent? Is it the 49ers themselves? Is it a way to say,
who could it be?
Right. It's a way to say, you're calling. We hear your calls, up those offers. And that's the part that has this little gray area with me. In terms of what realistically makes sense, and this is where Rappaport's tweet really sides with this part. Trey Lance isn't cleared to play. Brock Purdy's not cleared to play. The only quarterback on this roster that's cleared to play today was at the Golden State Warriors game with Christian McCaffrey. His name is Sam Darnold. So you mean to tell me the 49ers are in the business of trading a quarterback away that's not cleared? The other guy, the guy who's quarterback 1, is not cleared. And after you watched 4 quarterbacks last season go down with injury, you're in the business of trading one of these quarterbacks and leaving Sam Darnold and then calling Josh Johnson back in just so he can take reps. This is my biggest issue with this whole thing. None of this timeline makes sense. None of these objectively make sense in terms of where people are in their timeline. Trey Lance isn't cleared to play football. I don't care what Instagram video is out there. It looks nice. He's not cleared to play. Brock Purdy's not. And we have optimism that Brock Purdy's going to be fine. But if the 49ers were silly enough to trade Trey Lance with the optimism that Brock Purdy's going to be fine without any certainty, then you're not paying attention. Let's go back one more year, Brad.
Take me back.
Kyle Shanahan said at the owners' meeting about Jimmy Garoppolo, well, we just don't give quarterbacks away. We don't give them away, especially when we have good quarterbacks. And they were fully intent on starting Trey Lance right away. So you mean to tell me in 1 year, after Kyle Shanahan said, we're not giving Jimmy Garoppolo away, they didn't cut him, they let him hang around at training camp, they did all the things that nobody thought they would do, and then they wound up bringing him back. Now, the San Francisco 49ers are so pressed to get rid of Trey Lance for a third-round pick or whatever it is. And that's, by the way, another reason why you don't move him, because his value is in the basement right now at this point in terms of what you can get for him. They're so inclined to get rid of Trey Lance now, when last year, the oft-injured, the beautiful jawline, great hairline guy, they didn't just want to give away. So now you're telling me the guy that nobody knows anything about, who has the high ceiling that many teams around you are looking at and saying, if they're calling, I want to see if I can tap into that ceiling. Now the 49ers are in the business of just getting rid of Trey Lance. You have got to be absolutely kidding me. And real quick, heard a lot of stuff about people who are out of state that cover this team. How is it that I'm out of state and I can label all of the facts? And when you say out of state content creators can't do this and can't do that, it's really a diss at yourself, whoever's saying that, by the way, to whom it may concern. It's a diss at yourself because you live in the state, because you might walk into the building and you still get it wrong. If anything, that makes you look worse than it does anyone out there who is actually paying attention to facts and paying attention to what actually goes on. That's all I gotta say, Brad. That's it.
That's it. You said a lot. So let's try to unpack it, because you made a lot of really good points, and let's try to. And again, we don't want to spend this whole time talking about Trey Lance and the hypothetical situation that he's going to get traded, but obviously it's ruled the conversation all week. And I think both you and I align in regards to the ideology surrounding trading Trey Lance. It's just like it's a value game right now. Like, this is the business of football that we're talking about. We're not talking about production. We're not talking about in between the white lines. We're talking about these guys as assets and what their value is, not only to the team that they're on, but to the rest of the league. And right now, Trey Lance is one of those interesting scenarios that it's hard to put your finger on what his value is. I've seen trade scenarios where teams are trading third and fourth round picks. I've seen trade scenarios where they're trading multiple seconds, late round first. The value's all over the board. And so what is interesting, I think, about the way this conversation got started, because it all started with that particular tweet from Ian Rappaport that got everything going, is that that's what it feels like. It feels like this is a value gauge. It's kind of almost like, hey, let's condition everyone to the idea of it. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, because there's still a world that exists. If you trade Trey Lance for a third round draft pick and you don't even know if you have a healthy Brock Purdy, and you have Sam Darnold as your potential succession plan if Brock Purdy doesn't play this year, and you traded multiple first round picks to go get Trey Lance, it doesn't look good from an outside perspective. It really doesn't look good from like a business aspect, in my opinion, of how football, like, they want to operate in a front office. So for me, that whole situation felt like they're gauging the value. They're trying to really kick up the conversations, have everyone talking about it, see what the public perception of this would be, who's on board, who's not on board. Just kind of let the people kind of let the voices be heard on it, right? So, but I agree with you. Like, I still hold my opinion that the San Francisco 49ers should go into this year with Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, and Sam Darnold. You alluded to it. The 49ers couldn't even get through an entire season with 4 quarterbacks.
So let's trade a guy. Let's trade one of those guys. Let's just trade him before. But first of all, he's not even like clear to play. But let's trade one of those guys. When we can't
not
keep
only
quarterbacks
do you
healthy.
have the injury like as recent as last year, I keep talking about this point. This is ongoing under the Kyle Shanahan era. Like, George Kittle talks about it all the time. 4 out of his 6 years, he's had 3 or more quarterbacks in those 4 years. So this is just, it's it makes me feel uncomfortable. And do you want to rely on a DTR, a Jake Hayner, a Clayton Tune? Do you want to put your eggs into that particular basket? The thing that I think really it boils down to is the 49ers obviously are going to keep all their options open. And I think one of the options is the idea of trading Trey Lance. But I do believe there has to be a good return that you're getting. Like, you got to get a haul. Like, you can't let Trey go for peanuts, because then it just feels like a huge swing and a miss. So this whole situation obviously is going to continue to be ongoing, and we have this kind of figurative deadline right up until the draft, right? So we don't know if anything's ultimately going to happen. But let's say I want to pose this hypothetical to you.
Okay.
Let's say I've seen some Houston Texans like proposed trades where
Mhm.
you're getting a really early second, maybe, and some additional top 100 picks. If the San Francisco 49ers received that value, does that change their does that change the way they think about potentially trading Trey Lance? And to keep in mind, trading Trey Lance, you're taking a big time dead cap hit, and you're actually, from my understanding, you're losing more money by trading him than keeping him on your roster from a cap perspective. So there's a financial aspect to it. There's the aspect of giving up on a player. There's the aspect of all these different things. But with all that baked in, and they get this offer, do they jump at it, or do they keep going with this quarterback room as it stands?
Two things, Brad. That means, first of all, a team that only has $3 million in cap space is about to incur another $10 million in dead cap. No. Second of all, you would need a crystal ball that means that Brock Purdy is on track to play week 1. And if you don't, then you're hitching your wagon to 55 start Sam Darnold, and that is absolute malpractice. Again, small sample size, large sample size. Small sample size, sure. You can have a sweeping opinion about what you think Trey Lance is within his 4 or 5 starts. Cool. I can't do that. That's your business. But I can have a sweeping statement and opinion on 55 starts of Sam Darnold and realize I don't want any part of that on my team at all. I don't want any part of that starting for this team at all. So 2 things make this really dumb. First of all, that means you're just willing to take $10 million more of a cap hit for no reason. And 2, you need to make sure that Brock Purdy's healthy. Again, if Brock Purdy was healthy, everything was fine, everything was good, then Trey Lance would have been off this team. But he's not. So no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. None of this makes any sense from a money, personnel, logical standpoint. Are you kidding me, man? So you mean to tell me the 49ers would be cool with just taking 33, and then God forbid, Brock Purdy's not ready to play. So Sam Darnold is your guy. Sam Darnold is your guy.
What if, let me throw another what if at you. What if the 49ers have made their decision on Trey? Like, I'm not saying they have, but let's just say we don't know what's going on in those walls. They see practice every single day, and I'm talking about real practice. Like,
look, can you pull this one up real quick?
Which one?
Darnold went 4-2 with poor team. He can play a few games until Brock is back. 6 games. 6 games. 6 games, Judge Shetty. 6 games. He had a poor team for 55 games. He had a poor team for 55 starts, and he was awful. No, thank you. No, thank you. I love how it's 6 games of Sam Darnold. I'm cool with that. 4 games of Trey Lance. I can't deal with this at all. Incredible to me.
We're back to the sample size.
Incredible to me. 6 games at the end of Sam Darnold's time with the Carolina Panthers. By the way, he couldn't even beat out Baker Mayfield. By the way, also. And You're willing to tell me that in garbage time when the Panthers had nothing to play for and they were just doing whatever is enough for you to sit there and say, yeah, he's going to be great and he'll be fine. No, 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 and no. Come on, man. Like, again, use your eyes. He's garbage. And that's the thing. It's like 55 games. I'm not pulling this out of an assessment or something that I want to put out there in terms of a projection. He has been largely terrible. I don't know what you want me to say more than that. So again, it goes back to this, Brad. And when I asked John Lynch at the Combine about the whole veteran quarterback thing, right? His words in that response to me contradict what this Trey Lance trade would mean. Meaning, he said, I thought I insulated this room with 3 guys. I thought we did the best job that we could. But now you want to tell me that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan want to get rid of quarterbacks when the idea should be adding quarterbacks. I don't understand it. None of that.
Well, they're looking at DTR, Jason. Real tough.
But you know what? Draft a quarterback every single year at this point. You know why? All of them get injured. All of them get injured. I don't want to hear that them being interested in DTR has any inclination on Trey Lance. You need to draft a quarterback every single year at this point since you can't keep them healthy. You know, let's go further back than Kyle Shanahan. Let's go a little bit further back than Kyle, Brad. The 49ers haven't had a quarterback start 16 games. The last one was Jimmy Garoppolo in 2019.
And that was off an ACL injury.
Right. And even before that, before Kyle Shanahan was here, they haven't had a quarterback start 16 for God knows how long. So you're telling me this organization is sitting there and they're saying, we are dead set trying to move away from a guy because we might get the package that blows you away. The package that blows you away is if a team comes to you and says, we're going to give you 2 firsts and a third. That's when you say, I don't care if he's healthy. I don't care what's going on behind us. We make that move. No one's going to do that. No one's doing that. Nothing about what they've been saying has changed my mind on any of this because everything that they've said has been consistent. We listen to calls on every single guy. That doesn't mean we're in the business of trading them. And John Lynch literally looked me in the eye at the Combine and told me, I thought we did a great job of insulating the quarterback room last season. Obviously, we didn't. But now it's time to get rid of a quarterback and leave you with Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, who might be on PUP, and Josh Johnson, whoever the hell they're going to bring in back because you can't bring Sudfeld back. None of it makes sense at all, Brad. None of it. None of it.
Well, I think it all just comes back to the draft day trade. Like we've just been reeling since then. Like we're trying to figure out. It goes back to, the San Francisco 49ers and they're kind of, I would say it started out right away almost with like, I know it seems insignificant to some, but I do think when you're talking about marketing, right? You're talking about messaging. That's very important to these organizations, and rightfully so. But when they released their new 94 all whites, the crispy all whites, shout out to the Arizona Cardinals and getting absolutely dragged for their new jerseys. Kind of even the all whites looking like the 49ers. But one of the things was they didn't show Trey Lance in that particular I think their state of the franchise. I don't think Trey Lance was even really mentioned. And, I think that it instantly started this kind of narrative surrounding the whole situation regarding the 49ers quarterback, Jimmy versus Trey. And of course, our fan base is very divisive and they like to pick sides when it comes to the quarterback. So Jimmy versus Trey versus Jimmy. And now, Trey fans didn't like Jimmy fans, and now Trey fans are kind of like Jimmy fans in regards to the archetype, like the shift in like the energy. Like it was like the Trey. It's crazy just how everything ultimately has unfolded. But at the end of the day, it's a situation where we know Kyle Shanahan loves Sam Darnold.
He does,
and
he almost said it first to the Jets for him.
And what you can't say about Sam Darnold is that he's not talented. He's talented.
Nope.
What Sam Darnold has issues with is processing, and that's been on display
Decision making.
pre-draft. Decision-making, processing. But guess what Kyle does? He takes that away.
Takes the
Now you have
decisions
to be
away.
able to you have to have pre-snap recognition. That's huge. You have to be able to recognize what the defense is showing you so you can get your guys into the right form, or not the right formation, but the right route, whatever it is, based
Target
on
the right
what type
matchup.
of coverage. Exactly. And then you have to be able to identify and read post-snap. Well, Kyle does a lot of the work of identifying this is where you need to go in this scenario. If Sam can do that, I do see a world that exists. I know you don't like Sam, and I know
No,
you
it's
think
not that.
Sam
No. All right.
can't
Let
do
me
this.
No, let me clarify real quick, Brad. My issue is that I don't like Sam because last year when I floated the whole idea of, hey, I would love to take a flyer on Sam Darnold and see, what this kid has, because on tape you see some dazzling throws.
That's
and then
quarterback
you see
3, not a starter, right?
Right. You see some baffling throws. Like you see the dazzling throws. You see some baffling throws and just easy processing stuff. When I floated that idea last year on Twitter, everyone said, God help us. No, I don't want him on the team. He sees ghosts.
I was probably one of them too.
Yeah. My issue is this, Brad. Now, all of a sudden, because everyone is so far off of the Trey Lance train, that now all of those same people who had said, no, God, I don't want him around, are like, well, damn, I'd love to see what he could do in this offense with Kyle Shanahan and these weapons. Why are you not saying the same thing about Trey Lance? That is my biggest pushback on this.
I see what you're saying.
Sam Darnold is clearly talented. He's made throws on film that you look against the 49ers, by the way, too. I mean, at the end of that game in MetLife in 2020, he threw a pass off his back foot to Braxton Berrios with the killer Weatherspoon in coverage. Beautiful throw. Incredible. And then there's games where he literally throws it to the referee, who he thought was his receiver. Like, those are the things that I'm talking about.
Of course.
My issue is this. You have gone from being hopeful that Sam Bradford can turn it around to people being 100%, I would rather see Sam Bradford in this offense than Trey Lance. And I call complete BS on that. Absolute BS. None of that makes sense. None of it makes sense. All of you guys are lying. All of you. And please don't make me pull up receipts from last season, because I literally put up film clips. Look at this throw. Look at this throw. Oh, he sees ghosts. I don't want him. I don't want him. I don't want him. Now, all of a sudden, Sam Darnold is the guy that you want, and you are 100% certain is going to be better in this offense than a guy that you haven't even seen in this offense. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense, and you look dumb. That's really what it is about.
I don't know if the Sam Bradford was a slip of the tongue or intentional.
It probably was.
Either way,
I like Sam Bradford. That's Mac Jones.
It was perfect. I loved it. But yeah, man, it's a wild, and it all comes down to the value of Trey, right? That's what it all comes back to, because trading Trey, right, would make you feel that they have a lot of confidence in Sam, and you don't like that idea, right? That's basically that's the point. That's like
my problem.
If you're trading Trey, that is telling you that obviously the trade to 3 didn't work and they moved off. But on top of that, they're also turning to Sam Darnold in the interim, and that makes you want to jump off a bridge, basically.
Well, the thing is the pick of Trey was still wrong, and it's still a mismanagement from an organizational
because
standpoint.
He was so raw.
And the project that you're seeing turned out to be a project, and you aren't on the same timeline. I will stand clear on that. I feel terrible for Trey because what he needed reps, and his team is not in the business of giving away games and seasons in the name of reps. The Jaguars are, the Bears are, hell, even the Jets were. So that's my issue more than anything, is there's a world where Trey Lance isn't a good quarterback at all, right? Like, there is that world. But he went into a situation where he needed to be good so fast that it was never a proper place for him to develop. That's it. More than
No,
anything.
I think we agree with that. I think both of us have came to the conclusion that we thought the 49ers were the best landing spot, but it
Mhm.
was for a very specific type of quarterback. Like it needed to be almost like a Trevor Lawrence, a guy with so many reps under his belt that he could step in and the drop off for a rookie wasn't that substantial. And I mean, again, we were both at training camp, and Trey that
Mhm.
rookie year, he was still pretty good in training camp. I thought,
Mhm.
like even
Yeah.
hindsight being what it is, I think if we're being honest with ourselves, he maybe took a step back going from year one to year two in training camp, just from a training camp in a vacuum. Like when he came out, I remember that Wednesday. I always reference that Wednesday when all NFL media was there and Trey Lance went crazy. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, like it's happening. We're seeing it. Like there it is. Like it was the read options. He was making throws all over the field. Then heading into year two with the job that, that was his, he was a little bit more inconsistent. And maybe that's a deeper ongoing point internally that maybe that they're going back and forth about, and maybe why this is even a topic. But ultimately, at the end of the day, heading into year three, I think we just don't want to see them give up on Trey Lance yet. Like and try to recoup and get that return on investment that you gave up to get him. And I think that's where a lot of fans, maybe even like yourself included, just like, man, like we gave up so much for Trey. And
Yeah.
but have we given him the shot that we think he should get? Like again, he was the starter and he broke his ankle week 2. Like we don't know what he is, and but I also do believe, like if you say, hey, it's an open competition, I believe in that as well. Like I don't think you have to give Trey the job heading into year 3. I'm fine with bringing in Sam Darnold to push and potentially getting another rookie. You're gonna have to get more quarterbacks. It's just the facts, right? Because you have to have at like minimum 3 arms in training camp, but most likely 4. So they're gonna have to get more quarterbacks. But I think that's where like I'm at personally. I'll speak for myself. Like I don't want to see Trey Lance traded just because I am not in that building. One, but two, there is potential there. He has talent and he can improve. And I believe everyone has the ability to improve. And when you have someone like Trey Lance, who has so much raw talent, and from what we've seen and heard from him, he has the mental capacity to be able to do this. Can he still grow from an intangible standpoint? Of course, just like everyone can. He's a young kid, but still give Trey Lance the opportunity to compete. I think for me, that's what I would want to see. Like, regardless of trying to make sense of these rumors, at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want to see Trey Lance given the opportunity to compete against Sam and see what ultimately happens. But do you think the San Francisco 49ers are concerned about potentially having Sam and Trey compete, and maybe Sam, I know you don't think it would happen, but let's, again, hypothetical season, right? What if Sam outperformed Trey in training camp and wins the job over Trey? Does that kind of eradicate any value that Trey might have had prior to that battle?
I think so. I think if you ask around the league, you find out that a guy that you traded you moved heaven and earth for to number 3 was outplayed by a guy who's been largely awful his entire career. I think it absolutely would. So in that regard, Brad, if you were trying to squeeze the most value out of him without taking any risk, then that's where you could see this move. But again, like Brock's not ready to play.
Right,
Trey's not ready to play.
right.
And again, man, I'm gonna say it because I believe it and I'm gonna stand on it. If Brock Purdy was healthy week 1, Trey Lance is already off this team. I
You think
really
he's
do
you think he's
believe.
traded?
I do think he's traded. I do. I do think they would trade him and they would take whatever they want for him because when you look at, okay, you can look at the cost of moving up for Trey Lance, but the 49ers would finally feel like they have their franchise quarterback, which is a feeling that they've had with a bunch of guys, and we still are here without one since Steve Young.
Yeah, I mean,
So
if the 49ers beat Philly and let's say they won the Super Bowl,
mhm.
whatever. Yeah, you're right. Like Brock is the guy, and there's no questioning it,
Well,
right?
I'll say this, Brad. If they won a Super Bowl, then I don't really give a shit. Oh, I'm sorry.
We don't get.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Like I really don't care who's getting.
We're not talking
I don't
about
really.
that. We don't
I don't
care.
really care. I don't really care who's getting quarterback traded. I really don't care. I really don't. If they would have won a Super Bowl last year, bro,
We don't care.
I would just.
No,
I would just be sitting.
we're
I would
going
just be
on
sitting
vacation.
here like,
We're going to Cabo with Kyle.
right,
We're like,
trade,
we're out of here.
trade this guy. I don't care. I really
Trade
don't
everyone.
care.
We don't care. We got our ring.
but-
Finally, the sixth, the elusive sixth
But that's
ring.
the
We got
point.
it.
That's the point, is that since Steve Young, the 49ers are in the same spot. And I think the biggest frustration that 49ers fans have is that we're going into year 3 and we know the same amount about what Trey Lance could do at the NFL level than we did the day that we drafted him. And I think that is a hugely frustrating part for anybody. Whether you believed in Trey Lance or whether you didn't, we know the same amount about him in terms of what he can do based on his small sample size and the fact that he just hasn't taken reps. And I think that's the most frustrating part.
Yeah, and I think that's why, us who cover the team, we have to speculate, because obviously we're not in the practice portion. I'm not talking about warm-ups. I'm not talking about throwing drills and individual sessions in practice that the media have accessibility to. I'm talking about the practice that the media doesn't have access. No one has accessibility to unless you're a coach, a staffer, or an executive or a player. That's the only way that you see these guys in practice. Like, anyone could look good in individual drills. It's when you get into team, and it's when you start doing those things that really define what these players are. And anyone who says that they have seen that, they just haven't, because the 49ers don't allow that. They don't allow that access. They kick these guys out of here when individual drills are over. So at the end of the day, still no one who, even if you kind of preface yourself as an evaluator, outside of maybe what we saw at joint practices, right? Because joint practices, you see the whole practice. So, or at training camp, you see the whole practice, not in season. That's not how it works. In season, there's a cutoff. So what happens inside those 4 walls in season, we don't know. We don't know what's going on.
And to be fair, because I want to make sure we get to this this generous donation right here. Practice is one piece of the puzzle, and practice has now been used to be this overwhelming identifier for Trey Lance. And the guy that was here before was a notorious poor practice player, but he showed up on Sundays. Practices are one portion of the evaluation. But for Trey Lance, practice reports from people who are reporting whatever it is that they saw, they weren't even there, whatever it is. Yeah, that's another shot. Everybody's talking about what he did in training camp, and then practices are closed off to the media, yet is somehow the end-all be-all with Trey Lance, when there was a guy who threw 5 interceptions in one practice, and he would eventually be the starter and continue to be the starter. Practice is one portion. You can be I would rather have a poor practice player and a guy who shows up on Sunday than a guy who lights it up in practice, can't get it done on Sundays. So let's just add that to the conversation.
Yeah, one counter to that, Aaron Banks did not have a great training camp last year.
He did not. And he was great
into the season. But then even with that, what he showed on tape against the Bears, it wasn't the best, but I'm like, I see where he can improve. And he much better against the Bears than anyone else wanted to give him credit for. Everyone's calling him a bust instantly. And that was even me seeing him in training camp being like, oof, he's not having a great training camp. Even John Lynch himself, I think, went on the Tim Kawakami podcast, was like, yeah, we were a little worried about Aaron Banks because he really didn't have that great of a training camp, but he's a gamer. And when he stepped onto that field, some guys are like that. It hits different when you're actually playing a game and you can rise to that challenge.
Let's just say, again, the idea that practice is being the overwhelming reason, he had an up and down training camp. Well, you weren't there. A lot of the people that were reporting weren't there. And I think the one thing that's overarching and is lost is it's impossible to navigate all of the training camp goings on, right? Like, Brad, when we're there, Brad's watching O-line. I'm watching secondary. Jordan's watching running backs. Then we switch. I'm watching wide receivers. He's watching this. He's watching that. To be able to say that you have a definitive stranglehold on what happened is either just being purposely disingenuous or just outright lying. And again, look, we have a bunch of super chats, and I know you can't stick around for too much longer. So let's go. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we're gonna go get a run on super chats. So if you guys want to add to the conversation, get your super chats in. I'm gonna start off with this one from Fear the Great. That's my only gripe about this mess of a quarterback controversy. 55 games of a guy in Darnold, the turnover machine, and put him over Trey with 4 games, who also is injury prone. Hashtag make sense.
But Brad, can you imagine Sam Darnold in his offense with these weapons? My goodness. I mean, he's been terrible his entire career, but this is the time when he's going to actually be good.
Don't sleep on Darnold's screen game. I'm telling you, those wide receiver screens, he's gonna be cooking in Kyle Shanahan's offense. Just you wait till training camp, man.
Fear's nailing it, man. He's got it, man. I don't understand. I don't understand how you have a large sample size of someone being bad, and somehow the light's going to turn on. The Motel 6 is going to turn on. We'll leave the lights on for you. All of a sudden, it's going to turn on, and you can't wait to see him with a coach and these weapons. Say that same thing about Trey Lance. That's what you need to be saying. And I just haven't seen that, and I think that's the most frustrating part.
And I get your point. It's keep the same energy, right? That's basically
That's it. I love how it's well, Trey's done. I don't want to see him with McCaffrey, Kittle, Ayuk. Yeah, I don't want to see him with cooked. I don't want to see him with McCaffrey, Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo. I've seen enough. Well, like, Sam Darnold, I've seen you with some pretty good receivers at times, and you've just been average to mediocre to downright terrible. Again, don't point to Geno Smith. Don't point to Alex Smith. You are literally pointing to like the only 2 quarterbacks who have like completely turned their career around. And if you're hitching your wagon to him being one of the three people that have done it, then you're betting. Let's just put in a betting. You're betting plus 1,800 that he is going to change that up. So it just doesn't make sense.
I can't wait till training camp. Training camp is going to be freaking electric.
I'm not excited. I'll be honest with you. I'm only excited. I'm excited to see you. And I get time away, and I get to be, in Cali. We get to see our friends. We get to, hang out with the people that we respect to do this. But I'm not excited about this because there's going to be a lot of people there, and they're just going to be saying one thing. We're going to be saying one thing. Everybody's going to say, well, this guy said this, and this guy said this. I'm actually
it's going to be really interesting about the angling of these
the reports. I'm not excited. I'm not excited this year. I'll be honest with you, man. It was so much easier when it was just us, man.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be everyone's going to be there. You know the vibes. Gammon Brown says Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch laughing at these rumors in their office.
Well, they're laughing at us. They're not laughing at the rumors. They're laughing at us.
They're laughing at us 48 minutes in talking about.
Right. They're not watching this, but they've looked at Twitter and they're just seeing the comments of people like completely implode. That's why I've just been off of it. It's just like, hey, man, everybody has a right to their opinion. Everybody can say whatever it is that they want. And that's the beauty part of this. But there's certain opinions that you can jump to that are at least rooted in a little bit of logic. Some of this stuff I have a tough time even just wrapping my head around because none of it really makes sense. So.
Jesse, appreciate the super chat from you and Wifey. He says, question, what's more likely? Brock misses this year or Brock plays the whole year? So if Brock is more likely to play, why make Trey sit more? That's not fair to the young man. He needs to play, in my opinion. Take it away.
Jesse, if they knew that Brock Purdy was going to play the entire season, like I said, Trey Lance would be gone. They would just roll with their guy. In this instance, what's more likely? Brock misses the whole year or Brock plays the whole year. I would say what's more likely is that he misses the whole year, but he won't miss the whole year. I don't think he'll miss the whole year. I don't. I mean, you're asking me this question, or asking us this question. So what's more likely? It's not that Brock plays the whole year, in my opinion, because there is a timeline where he does, return for week 1. And that's best case scenario because the guy will just be able to get right back into the saddle and run with this offense. And I think that's kind of what we all want. We still all, whether we agree on who the quarterback is, we all just want a guy. We all just want the guy,
Right.
I think, at this point. But I think if you're talking about this timeline and you're listening to the way Brock's speaking, Brock wasn't saying that he's not going to play this whole year as a fact. He was just saying that's one of the range of outcomes. Like, that's one of them in the range of outcomes. So
Right.
I would say that he has a better chance of missing this year than playing the whole year, but he's not going to miss the year. And he'll probably be back sooner than later, in my opinion.
Yeah, if I had to answer this question, what's more likely, Brock misses the year or Brock plays the whole year? I would actually pick he plays the whole year. I don't think he's going to miss this year. Even if he misses games, which obviously throws the nuance into it, but I still have him pegged as playing more games than missing. So with that rationale, I would pick Brock plays the whole year because it's still a range of outcome. And I do anticipate he plays. I don't think he'll miss this year. But so that's kind of where I would land on that. But again, the broader point is Trey and his reps. Does he get those reps? And I think that's what the conversation stems around. And maybe if the 49ers see that as a potential outcome of, man, we don't see a path forward for Trey getting these reps to be able to develop, maybe right now is his highest value, opposed to having him sit behind, maybe losing a camp battle to Sam, or sitting behind Brock and not seeing the field for truly significant snaps since 2019. We would be having the same conversation heading into 2024, and that's where I think the nuance lies.
That's the thing is, and to Jesse's point, if Brock Purdy's healthy, ready to go, and the 49ers are confident, then it's all business is open on Trey Lance at this point. And again, this is where my issue with the whole, like, oh, we're trading Trey Lance in 6 days. Where do you have your crystal ball? Do you bank on optimism instead of certainty? And if you're looking at the way that this front office has operated, especially in the face of losing all of these quarterbacks, you mean to tell me that you're trading Trey Lance with the hope that Brock Purdy eventually gets healthy and that Sam Darnold is your other quarterback, and then you have to bring in another quarterback to just be there just in case he gets injured? That's the part where you lose me a little bit. But if you have a certain concrete timeline and Brock Purdy's ready to go, ready to roll, I think that's when you start to see a little bit more movement, or at least a little bit more momentum towards moving Trey Lance, because they are very clear and set, and they have been, and they haven't lied one bit, and they haven't shied away from it. Brock Purdy's their guy, and that's the thing.
Yeah. So I agree. I agree 100%. I think that's a big part of, and you said it earlier too, like if Brock didn't get hurt, there's a good chance like this conversation is less of a hypothetical and more of just, okay, we understand, because they found their franchise guy and they would say, Brock is our franchise guy. We love Trey, but unfortunately, with the circumstances, this guy took advantage of his opportunity. The whole organization rallied, the fan base rallied, and it's just an unfortunate situation. But because that didn't happen, there's all these unknowns. Just all the Brock, we've talked about it before, but Brock tearing his UCL was the worst possible thing that could have happened for this quarterback. Just ongoing conversation that just seemingly will never end. But it's where we are today. Shout out to everyone sending super chats. Shout out to Justin for the 20 piece. Appreciate you, my brother. And
Dontavia Wicks is a baller, Justin.
Justin says, hope you guys are having a good Friday. I got one question, and it's how many quarterbacks they're keeping on the roster if they draft one too, because DTR isn't making it onto the practice squad. Darnold cut like Sudfeld. Go for it.
Justin, you're easily one of the smartest guys that I've come across on Twitter when it comes to evaluating players, understanding the game. Sam Darnold signed the exact same deal that Nate Sudfeld did last season. So let's go back one more year. Trey Lance, Nate Sudfeld, and the 49ers draft Brock Purdy. their last pick? Did they necessarily need to? Or is it prudent and smart to continue to draft quarterbacks, especially at the rate that you lose them, and it's such a premium position, and the later you get them, the less you have to pay them, especially in the beginning? Such a good call, Justin, because there is a possibility that Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, DTR, and Darnold are all like sitting around in this roster. But if DTR looks better than Sam Darnold, bye, Sam. We're going to take a chance on the guy who cost us nothing and possibly could give us a little bit more in upside. And it's the same thing that happened to Nate Sudfeld. The same thing. So again,
I got a wild ass hype. Oh, finish your thought. I got a wild.
No, but it's the same thing. It's the same idea, Justin. It's the same idea. Nate Sudfeld, we followed the money, right? And we were like, oh, he's quarterback 2, he's quarterback 2, he's quarterback 2. Well, Jimmy Garoppolo comes back. Well, you know what? You got to go, and we're keeping Brock Purdy. Yeah. There is a world where this is the way that the 49ers operate, and they move, and they have business. So that's a good thought. I think that's a good thought.
I got a wild ass hypothetical for you.
Yep.
Hypothetical. Let me make that abundantly clear. The 49ers keep all 3 quarterbacks, and they draft DTR in the 5th round. What do the 49ers do if in training camp DTR and Trey Lance look eerily similar? Ooh. And DTR isn't going to make it to the practice squad. Trey Lance isn't going to make it to the practice squad. Sam Darnold outperforms Trey. What do they do? What do you do? Do you put Brock on PUP? Maybe like it's again hypothetical, 100% hypothetical. But well, like, I think that's again a range of outcome. I think maybe something that they're terrified of. Like I don't think any of us think that would happen. But none of us thought Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, would be slotted in as potentially your franchise guy over Trey Lance. Like none of us had that on our bingo card.
And if DTR is what they thought Trey was, then they're going to go with their hot hand, their feeling of the moment. I don't think the 49ers are in the business of waiting for something to happen. And I think that's a good hypothetical. In that regard, you have Sam Darnold, you have Brock Purdy, you have DTR, and Brock Purdy's going to miss maybe 1 or 2 games, maybe 3 weeks. Okay, then you can try to tread water with Sam Darnold and see what you can get. And you still have DTR, who's a guy that has some similar skills that Trey Lance has, and then you cash in on that value with Trey Lance. So I think that is a good hypothetical. And again, it just the 49ers doing more work and looking at quarterbacks doesn't tell me anything about how they feel about their position more than they're just going to continue to always look and look and look, just like they did last year when Trey Lance was the starter. Nate Sudfeld had got paid $2 million. Jimmy was still on the roster and for all intents and purposes wasn't going to come back. But then you pivot back, and then you still have this guy that you drafted who Brock Purdy right now still is not part of the top 51 cap hits on his team. Still not. So when you draft them later on and it's a premium position and you get more from it, it seems to be the way the 49ers are moving. And I think that's really what we should look at when it comes to that, is less about what you think those moves tell you about how they feel about the quarterbacks and more about this is the way the 49ers are going to continue to replenish the position, look to keep guys that are there, and also the injury stuff. So, yeah, that's just kind of how I feel about it, Brett.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's going to be interesting, but I think the 49ers have also made it abundantly clear with Trey Sermon, with Sudfeld. It kind of doesn't matter whether what you're paid or potentially where you were drafted. The 49ers are going to get after it.
Hold up. Did you see that breaking news from My Sports Update?
Yeah, I'm making a post right now.
Okay. So, all right. So while you make the post real quick, I'll talk about it. And I know we got to get out of here because you got to go.
Yeah.
But Steve Keim was on the herd, who's the former Cardinals GM. and they brought Nick Bosa in on a visit. And he said that Nick Bosa told him, I think you guys are probably going to take that little quarterback. And if you do, I will haunt you for the rest of your career. Shout out to forever 49er Nick Bosa. I thought that was really cool. And get worked, Arizona.
I'm watching the video right now as we get it recorded, and it's funny because I was just tweeting about this yesterday. I said, "Shout out the Cardinals for picking Kyler Murray over Nick Bosa," and all the Cardinals fans started chirping like, "Oh, well, what has Nick Bosa done against the Cardinals?" I'm like, "This, you're talking about the defensive player of the year. Put some respect on the defensive player of the year." While Kyler Murray's trying to get off COD and fix his COD edition or addiction and actually focus on football. But that's pretty wild that Steve Keim would say that, because would you say that he was right?
Yes. And all right. I want to make sure I articulate this. The Cardinals needed a quarterback, and the 49ers wouldn't have drafted. If they took Nick Bosa, the 49ers weren't taking Kyler Murray, right? So it's more about need. And this goes back to the old adage that you and I go through, all the time, is sometimes drafting for need pushes you out of best player available. And then at the same time, quarterback's such a premium position. I think the Cardinals made the decision they had to make. They had to make that decision. There's no way they could have sold their fan base on the fact that Cliff Kingsbury runs an offense that Kyler was supposed to be in, and Cliff is this new, whatever. We didn't buy into the fact that Cliff was a good coach, but he's this new guy, whatever. It was absolutely the right decision for Arizona, and it's a set of circumstances that worked out in the 49ers' favor because they got the player that is leading to more wins. Everybody talks about quarterback wins. When Nick Bosa's healthy, the San Francisco 49ers win games. And now we're talking about edge wins. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Let's end it on this last super chat. Sign Casey Hayward. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, him or Marcus Peters at this point, but they would have to come for nothing. I mean, there's only $3 million left in cap space, and you still have to sign your entire draft class, which I don't think the 49ers are still going to be drafting 11 guys. I'll still stand on that hill of they're going to trade up and try to move up a little bit. My question would be, would they be willing to come here for nothing? And since we're trading Trey Lance before June 1st, we're going to take on another $10 million in dead cap hit, since it's almost a done deal at this point. I would like that, but the 49ers would have to find a creative way to get it done under the salary cap circumstances. So, yeah.
Yeah. You said it perfectly. There's a lot of red tape to move through on any potential signings, and that's for sure. I'm pretty sure also in regards to that comment on Bosa, George Kittle just quote tweeted it and said Bosa. So I think the 49ers made the right choice with that, or I would say it was an easy choice because Bosa was there. But it's Arizona that's having to deal with those repercussions of it all.
Brad,
yeah.
So let's say we live in a world where the Arizona Cardinals drafted Nick Bosa and the 49ers at 2. I'm leading you into this answer. What do the 49ers do at 2?
I spent months with the idea that Bosa was going 1. 49ers would trade back to 6 with the New York Giants, recoup OBJ, and draft Brian Burns 6th overall. That was my dream scenario, and it will be locked into my brain forever. Could you imagine San Francisco 49ers, because the Giants needed a quarterback, they trade up, get Kyler Murray at 2, 49ers drop back to 6, get OBJ in that hole because they were shopping OBJ, and then the 49ers draft Brian Burns. That was my galaxy brain scenario that I still, I love Brian. I mean, I love Brian Burns. I love Bosa, but man, if you would have got prime OBJ with Brian Burns, I would have been happy about that too, but I'm still very happy with Nick Bosa at the end of the day, and all that good
And
stuff. But thank you for leading me to that.
yeah, for sure. And since we're just being sad, I wanted the 49ers to draft Terry McLaurin. They drafted Jalen Hurd. That's the state of the franchise, guys. Let's make sure we get out of here on a good note because I'm gonna go cry.
Absolutely. What a time to be alive. And of course, the draft's coming up, and every time we try to refocus on the draft, something draws us back to talking about the quarterback. But again, it's going to be a lot of draft talk next week. The draft is 6 days away, so we're going to have plenty to talk about, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. And thank God the draft is here, and we get to evaluate players and talk about it. But I do think the 49ers are going to move up and they should be drafting in the second round. That's my hot take. You're not going to be able to draft all 11 guys and put them on the roster at this point. I think it's prudent for you to move up, identify a guy, make sure you go get a guy who's an impact player right away. And I think the 49ers have enough ammo to do that without spending one of their first round picks next year. And Brad, once this draft is over, unless something drastic happens, we're back to evaluating blue chip first round talent again and not trying to look for diamonds in the rough. So I love it, man.
It's gonna be an amazing time. We get first round picks again, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. I know you guys are as well, and hopefully by then we have a good, solid handle on what's happening with the quarterback position. But until then, we will continue to be here talking about it. Shout out to everyone for tapping in for State of the Franchise. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back maybe earlier next week because the draft's on Thursday.
The draft starts on Thursday, round 1. Second round and third round are Friday, and then the rest of it will be on Saturday.
All right. So we're cooking next week. Appreciate everyone tapping in, and we'll continue to bring the content. You got anything coming out on your stuff?
No, just Niners Nation. Every day for the rest of the week. I'm sure once the draft happens, we'll have much more to write about. But yeah, Niners Nation. Follow me on Twitter, Jason Aponte 2103, and make sure you like both our videos and subscribe to both of our channels. So yeah,
absolutely appreciate everyone as always for tapping in. That's us for today, and we are out of here. Peace. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're gonna get into it all right now.